people here, there's still a lot of people watching. Anyway, I'd now Christian Peters, who's the Director of Product, who came in from the West Coast at the Comcast Silicon Valley Innovation Center. He's the team's they've been focusing on personalization, personal media, TV apps, and Comcast, and he's going to talk to you about aligning bots with brands. Please join me in welcoming Christian Peterson.
Right. We got my slides. Okay, so I'll wait for that. Basically, my team's out in Sunnyvale, California, are focused around personalization. Is there a clicker or? Oh, sorry. And basically that means we're trying to make our products more personal to you so that it's all about you and not just the same for everybody. And as part of that, we're definitely looking at both bots and conversational UI and how that plays in. And basically, one of the key focus we have is how can we make it easier to decide what to watch. And this is all about really following the trend that's happening where everything is getting more personal. I'm not sure what the biggest trigger was, but in my minds, it really happened with the iPhone. People don't necessarily realize how personal a phone with with apps they installed is. But it basically, all you have to do is ask yourself if you're willing to switch phone with whoever's sitting next to you. That's probably not going to happen, right? And the panic you see in people's eyes. We've all seen the ads where someone takes people's phones and put them in a shredder. We get really scared if what's personal to us gets taken away. And I think that's really a really strong message to everybody who's building products or doing advertising, that it's got to be so personal that if I don't get it, I get panicked. And that's really what my teams are focused on. So chatbots is obviously a big thing happening. I've never in my entire career experienced that the big five all went and did huge investments and said the next year is going to happen with chatbots, personal assistants, and AI. I don't think it's happened before. The investments are huge, and basically you're seeing a race to each company that has something to add of value in this. That said, chatbots are very young. I believe the number is 38,000 now on Facebook, and I haven't tried them all, but I've tried to try all the ones that people said were okay or better, and I'm not that impressed. I think it's really, really early days. There's definitely lots yet to be learned, and lots of growth potential. But we are seeing some bots being interesting. The way Gartner looks at it is that we got another 2 to 10 years before digital personal assistants or conversational UI is really happening. Now, obviously, that's a big range. I choose to pick 3 to 4 years in that range as something I find realistic. And I actually think it'll take most companies that long to master. And that essentially means that if we haven't already started, we're a little bit behind. The way we started at Comcast is really with what you see most bots do today, which is command and intent. In other words, you can say one thing to the bot, and it'll do something for you or have a response for you. We've distributed 10 million voice-enabled remote controls to our customers, and that means you can basically take the remote control, press the microphone button and say, tune to NBC, or find me movies with Matt Damon, or how many medals did the US get in the Olympics, and so on. And the same thing you've seen with Amazon Alexa or Amazon Echo. They are, I think they got 4 million devices out, and people are using them for, play some country. If I don't have my hands free, that's great. Apparently the most common place to put an Amazon Echo is in the kitchen, where you often have your hands dirty or into something, so you don't want to touch the device. That's great for voice control. You can also control the lights. All my lights in my home is controlled by Alexa. And that's great progress for command and intent, but it really doesn't go beyond that. So we're really looking at what does it take to go beyond that. And it's definitely all about data. You really have to get to a point where the bot knows everything about the user. And that means that it's not just what the bot knows, but what all your system knows that needs to be available for the bot. And that goes whether you're selling something or whether it's part of a product experience. We can't have bots that don't know what happened over here or over here. And the other thing is it needs to be focused. So I don't know how much you use Siri or Alexa or Google Now, but they're really trying to, what I would call boil the ocean, they're really trying to be a bot, a MediaBot that does everything. That's a very difficult task to do. Essentially, a conversational UI that covers everything, that would be better than the smartest human ever. That's probably going to take more than 2 to 10 years. So we got to start a little narrower. So start with a limited scope. And we've seen some examples of this within travel, health, selling something like tickets or something very specific. Insurance are working a lot with bots. And it really comes down to that if it does two things to narrow the scope. It makes it a lot less work and a lot easier to do. But it also means for the user, they know what this bot does. And that's really important because while we're still in command and intent, the user basically has to know what to say to the bot. That's a big ask. That almost takes us back to DOS, where you had to remember the commands. So, you'll see people out there saying that's why bots is not going to take over. It's not going to replace the GUIs or the apps. And that's probably true. I mean, every time someone says this is going to replace everything else, it doesn't really happen. Even the smartphone hasn't replaced cameras totally yet. It takes a while at least. So how do we fix this thing that is hard to know what to say to a bot? So, we try to put some help screens up, what you can say to our voice remote. And I've tried to go through them, and after going through 7 screens of various commands I can say, I could remember 1 or 2. And that's not very useful. So what do? Well, our theory is basically that you have to basically get to a point where you talk to the bot and want to talk to the bot. And what does that take? How do you make people want to talk to the bot? It's in my mind, very simple. It has to behave like a human because that's what we use conversation for. We're not going to learn a new way to converse. We're going to have the bots learn how we converse, and that's going to be a successful bot. At the same time, though, the bot can think like a computer or think like a bot. In other words, it's got this huge potential of access to all kinds of data that most humans would never be able to master. It can search, it can sort, it can compare, do pattern recognition, all these things. And we're actually getting better and better at these things. It used to be very simple pattern recognition. Now it's machine learning, and next is what's called deep learning. That essentially means not that we're close to having a computer think like a human, but they're getting awful good at thinking like a computer and being very fast at both predicting the future based on the past, but also with deep learning going beyond that and basically saying something doesn't have to have happened before for it to happen in the future. So the bot needs to basically show that it's knowledgeable, remember more than humans, and be very fast at getting information. But it also has to be friendly, energetic, a good listener, and just basically be really good at what it does. And that's another reason to keep it narrow, because it's a lot easier to be good at one thing. And on that topic, one of the interesting things we're going to see is, will we see open platforms like we've seen on mobile? When one of you guys publish an app on iPhone or Android, Apple, apart from a short approval process, doesn't really get in the middle of that. Right now, if you want to have your commands execute on Alexa, the user has to talk to Alexa. So actually, Amazon has put themselves in between you and your brand. And I don't think that's going to work long term. So what happens when users keep having conversations with bots? And this is kind of the magic of conversational UI, because it will basically fix the problem of knowing what you can say to a bot, because basically, if it's fun to talk to the bot, and we already have bots out there that we're seeing, I think actually earlier today, someone talked about a bot that had long conversations with the users. So it's definitely possible to have these bots be something we want to keep talking to. And that actually means the user can get to know the bot, slowly learn what the bot can do, learn what the bot can do when they need it, which is really the way that humans learn new stuff. We're really bad at learning stuff that we don't need right now, but we're really good at learning stuff that we need. And then, because of the long conversations now with the bot, or repeated conversations, the bot can actually get to know the user as well, and obviously that's really important because now the bot can be even better at doing its job helping the user. And that's really how I see the future of conversational UI. So it's really all about personalization. And that word is not a buzzword, even though we've heard it all day today. It really is kind of if we don't personalize all our communication, whether it's before we get a customer, while we have the customer, even when we lose a customer for that matter, if that's not personalized, then we're doing both ourselves and the customers a big disfavor. But it's still early days for bots, and we got to start working on it, but it's going to take some time to really master this. And we have to fix the part about the data. So right now, most companies have their data all over the place. And if we don't find a way for the bot to get access to at least most of the important data, then it's not going to be a very helpful bot. And then we got to find a way to move beyond command and intent. And as I mentioned, I think that's basically making bots that people want to talk to. That's really what I wanted to present today. So any questions you guys have?
Yeah, I've got one question. Can you talk about where your learnings go? What do you do with all this? Like now and a year from now, when you learn more about bots, what do you do with all of that?
Got it. So, for instance, I mean, we do lots of different things. But for instance, over the summer, we had a project where we basically built a bot that tried to access what we knew about the user's TV preferences. So you could basically ask it, what should I watch? And it'll come back and say something like, there is 2 new episodes of your favorite shows. There is 2 new movies available to watch for free. I'd respond, is there any action? And it'd say, yes, one of the episodes is 24 hours, and one of the movies is the new James Bond movie. And I'd pick one of those 2, and now basically the bot helped me the same way a human would help me decide what to watch. So that's kind of where we are. Now, that sounds like, oh, great, we got a bot that can help you decide what to watch. Now, the problem with that is that it's not nearly good enough to handle all the thousands of edge cases that we would put it in front of if we release something like that. So that's when I say that we're not quite there yet. We're definitely not there yet. The other thing we're doing is we're actually working on really extending the command and intent platform we have. We have a whole team in Philadelphia that is focused on really becoming the best TV platform for just basically using your voice instead of remote control. Any other questions?
You have questions?
I have one, but I'll ask it.
Okay.
Okay.
Great stuff. I love the future being invented on the fly as we go here. Very good. Now, Sapient Nitro, as you probably know, since they're on a lot of our programs, because they do a lot of great things. We select the people who are on the programs, and we try to screen, so we do very well. I'd like to now introduce Gabe Weiss, who's the innovation lead of Sapient Nitro, who's going to talk about the alignment of brands and bots. Gabe.
great. All right, so some good themes. Thank you, Christian. There were some things that you talked about that I'm going to cover a little bit of. And I loved Hayden's speech before where he was talking about the fact that there is so much to cover. How do we focus and make something interesting and not repeat the other hundreds of people that have talked today about chatbots, right? So what I tried to do is think about what's going on with customers. And you talked about 4 years a minute ago about we're 4 years away. So in 4 years, Gartner says that more than 85% of customer engagement will be without people. You guys ready for that? Our brand's ready for that, right? So you think about that, why is this happening? The reality is, and this is from a study we did in May, but 55% of people would prefer self-service, right? Instead of speaking to a company representative for probably 85% of their problems. The best one I like at the bottom, 32% not having to actually talk to a human being, right? So if you think about these stats, think about consumer behavior, you start thinking about, okay, so how are we going to use digital to connect with a customer in a way that's meaningful for brands, right? So this is where I think about the old days of chatbots, right? This guy Clippy. How awesome was Clippy? Everybody hated Clippy more than anything. And the reason they hated Clippy was because Clippy was made for a new person to tell you how to do a spreadsheet. And once you figured out how to do a spreadsheet, he would come back every time you open the program and say, want to learn how to do a spreadsheet? Right? So Clippy's not what we want to be creating here. And every time we come out with a new technology, a new advertising channel, a new fragmented way to go, we create Clippies. We create a lot of Clippies. You said 36,000? There are hundreds of thousands in Kik. There are other chatbots all over the globe. And there's a lot of those, right? So I want to make more of these. Does everyone remember this guy? Subservient Chicken. He had 100 things you could ask him to do, and he would go do it. They made 100 videos plus of this chicken doing crazy stuff. You could ask him to do anything because Burger King was about having chicken your way, right? That's interesting. I want to make more interesting things. I want the bots we make to do that. That was a chatbot. Does anyone remember it? You guys even know what I'm talking about? They brought him back, and he did weird things too. So yeah, there he is having some fun. Does anyone know Ava? Does everyone remember this last year? Anyone know who Ava is? Ava was a lovely 25-year-old girl who attended South by Southwest. She flirted with a lot of guys there on Tinder. Ava was a Tinder bot promoting a small movie called Ex Machina. Anyone remember that? Anyone know this? There are tirades of gentlemen who were at South by Southwest, journalists writing about how frustrated they were with the fact that they got all excited they met this great girl only to find out she was a bot. That's where the technology is. You can do some really interesting things with it. So how do we think about doing interesting things? This is Johnny Walker's bot. It's nice. I think about Johnny Walker and I think, keep on walking. What can those guys do that's more interesting than educating me about the archive of and all the institutional knowledge they have about whiskey? Talk to me about the lifestyle of being a whiskey drinker. Engage me in that. Show me how to have fun and around the lifestyle of being Johnny Walker. So I challenge all of us to not make any Clickbee bots. Okay? Can we do that? Everyone in? You interested? Okay. This came up a couple times. This is the way we think about it. We think about there are two kinds of bots kind of proliferating right now. Some are rules-based, and some are AI and machine-based. I call these dumb and young. Very similar to what Christian said. We're very early. The dumb ones are rules-based. You guys, these scripts have been around since the 90s when CRM people started creating IVRs. You call in, you go through the buttons, script through that. That's what these things are doing now. It is so challenging, so boring, so right? And then young, these guys haven't created enough content, enough learning to understand what to do from an AI perspective, so we've got to feed that. There's a great case, I think it's XI, or X.io. They used humans for a long time telling everyone they were using bots. And the humans were doing a great job answering everyone's questions, only to one day all get fired because they had built up enough stuff. And then they all came out in the press and said they weren't actually chatbots, they were humans. And they were doing such a high quality, they were so good at and delivering such a high quality answer that they over-delivered compared to what the bot eventually did. And they're still working on it, and that's great. But again, it's young. It's early. So bots are dumb and young. Who's in? Okay. Brands need to connect with customers on entirely new levels to ensure that they don't become meh, right? There's so much meh, and there's so much stuff going on. So my presentation today is about building brand bots, the UX of personality. This came up over and over in other presentations. How do we create interesting personality that connects to the brand's values? And the notion that brands have kind of gotten broken, right? You think about an enterprise brand, brands have been around for a long time. They were created to be perfect. How many humans do you guys know that are perfect, right? Everybody engages with brands as if they are humans. So we've now got to build fallibility into brands. We have to allow brands to fail like a human would fail. And then mea culpa, I made a mistake, and yeah. But the notion is we have so many pieces of the brand now touching a customer in so many different ways, and so many different human beings touching that don't really fully understand how to deliver the brand. So they're delivering it inconsistently in disjointed ways. And so how do we create personality and brand guidelines that drive personality of the brand that's meaningful for a massive scaled client, such as these guys that I've worked on? So that's me. I'm one of the retail innovation leads. There's my contact information. I've worked on all these brands in some way, and some of them more recently than others. But a lot of the challenges these guys have is, how do we transform and at scale and deliver our brand in a consistent way? So when we think about chatbots, we do a lot of research. This is our little plug of who we are and what we do. So you can download our Sapien Nitro Insights app. These are thought leadership pieces. One of them in the middle, I'll highlight, is experience automation using technology to amplify the human touch. So all of these, we think about, how do I codify how a human being, a salesperson or a service support rep might engage with a customer? How do we digitize the best of that human being that works for that company, and then build it into an e-commerce system so it can deliver that great experience at the level of the best sales rep and the best customer service rep in a consistent way across the entire organization, right? So anyway, a little bit more plug for us. We are built out of technology. We grew up out of technology. We operate at the center of where technology and story meets, and we've grown a lot of capabilities. The world has, the industry analysts have recognized us for this, from e-commerce to mobile to innovation, and enough about us. So back to this. The UX of personality, right? You guys think about this? Because I think about it a lot. The notion that chatbots are scripted but have to deliver in a human tone, and the notion that we are moving to a voice-enabled economy when we look at Alexa and things like that. Try doing everything using your voice. It's really, really hard. We're the early days of the web in that realm. We're still not using the data that's right there in front of us. I had a great example where I tried doing everything on voice. I was tracking a package using FedEx, and I called them and I gave them the number, and they said, "It's on its way. Would you like text messages?" And I said, "Sure," in voice, and it said, "Okay, send the tracking number to this text number, and then we'll track it for you and send you text along the way." I'm like, why can't you just say, "Okay, I have all that data. I just gave it to you," right? Old days of the web. We're now experiencing that from a voice perspective. So try and live your life with just voice, with what's available, and you'll start finding all these crazy gaps that we have to do work for. So back to the UX of personality. Where brands come from? Wow, that's washed out. Okay, so this is a model that basically says a human being, personality, brands deliver the brand image using visual, voice, and behavior. Visual and voice, we got that. We've got messaging down for years to come. We know how to do that. Behavior, no idea how to do that. UX people are starting to get this. CX people are starting to get this. But when you combine the three, you are now creating experience. You are now creating what the brand's image is, and you're using the character and the personality of the brand to do that through all these mechanisms. They have to work together in concert. So when we think about personality, this is an official definition. It refers to the individual differences in characteristics, patterns of thinking and feeling and behaving, right? Great. Another study said there were 4,000 plus words to describe various personality traits in the dictionary. So if that's the case, how do I craft and design a personality, right? We know how to do this for brands. We're learning how to do it from an experience perspective, and we have to figure this out for bots and voice interactions. So we've got a model that we've designed to work with brands, and similar, we do things like we look at what's the role of the brand, and Hayden talked about that before. What is the purpose of the brand, and how are they going to engage with the customer? How are they helping the customer in some way? We talked about archetypes a bit. How do you kind of position the brand in the normal way, where Nike was 0, we talked about a bit. how do you use your brand's archetype and marry it with the role of the brand and the way that they engage and create an emotional connection with the customer? And then how do you experience that? And how do you kind of codify all this so that other people in your organization can go make this on your behalf in a consistent way? What is the type of role that we want to play? So we look at personas that help people achieve things. And then we think about that. I'm going to brief this into a creative guy, and I'm going to say, or a girl, I'm going to say, I want you to create a concierge. And they're going to say, well, what's different between a concierge and an advisor or a coach? Well, we've done that research. A concierge, as an example, does all the work for you and hands you the answer. In fact, they make the reservation, they do all the work, blah, blah, blah. An advisor says, here's a bunch of options. It's up to you to decide. Here's all the things you need to think about on you. A coach, they might help you, give you some strategy, help you figure out how to do something, and then push you to kind of do it yourself, right? So there's all these different behaviors and ways that these personas can inspire a creative person to create creative that does these things. These are all the ways you help them. You are a designer. You are a personal shopper. You are an influencer. You're a stylist. You're a friend. You tell people whether or not that looks good. Help our creatives understand how to approach creating bots. Archetypes, we mentioned these before, they're very standard, right? These are the standardized characters, Jungian, in most stories, right? And so brands position themselves in this way in their category so they can stand out. And these are different archetypes you can play with. So if we think about what is your brand, how does that brand start to take its hero or ruler, as an example, for Verizon, and talk about we're going to be the ruler, but we're also going to be the concierge and have empathy for you when we're solving your problem, which the Christian said the Comcast guys have a hard time with, right? So they're trying. People want. Actually, the guys before said people in telecom want their problems solved, and the customer service is the hardest thing. So how do we help the bots solve that on their behalf and have the empathy that this person is mad and needs to be helped? So these are just examples of some coaches and how those human characters start to give you guys ways to think about this. The emperor, clearly, is the emperor, right? The ruler. You look at some of these other guys, the outlaw, the everyman. Hopefully these guys are all recognizable for most people in the room, or I'm not just dating myself as being super old. And we'll go on to the next one. So emotional connection. We start looking at, okay, great, you've been positioned as an archetype, but how do you actually engage with the brand? Right? Are you reassuring? I can't even see. Are you reassuring? Are you empathetic? Are you encouraging? Are you inspiring, empowering? You can take all these from the archetypes, but then turn around and say, how am I connecting that archetype to the customer? What's going to be useful and meaningful? And then I take those and I explode them across the coach example. So what different types of coaches can I, again, inspire my creatives with, and the rest of our teams with? Right? And you can start to see the differences when you brief somebody in about the attributes of this human being and how they could create a really interesting personality that might be useful for you to create chatbots from. So we kind of, the last kind of thing is, how does this personality engage? And so we use 5 experience dimensions, and we use those with very deliberate reason. And this particular one is an example for a coach. What does a coach do in your life? They teach. They support, they inspire, they strategize, they endure. You can actually create a lot of great experiences that deliver all those things, but you might need different content. You might need different chatbot scripts. You might need different ways in to solve some of these things. And sometimes people, a coach might be just there to give you some tough love. So you need that personality to start coming out, right? And so this is different ways that we think about, again, inspiring creatives. The other thing is we chose 5 because there's a heuristic we use to measure experiences that has 5 different heuristics. And when you look at all 5 of those together, you start realizing that there's really easy ways to understand if we're delivering and we're making meaningful impact with customers across the entire ecosystem of customer experience. So I'm racing because I have not a lot of time left. But let's talk about bots who actually have personality that I've found. This one's awesome. This is National Geographic, who, by the way, has one of the highest Instagram following and Twitter followers of any brand out there. They've created Talk to Tina the T-Rex. Tina the T-Rex is an educator. She is actually a T-Rex, and she tells you, little kids, all about what T-Rexes do in their lives. She talks to them much like an educator would talk to a little kid, right? In the persona of the T-Rex. Hopefully she doesn't bite their heads off, but she gets them interested in T-Rexes, right? Miss Piggy. This bot is actually AI-driven. She actually continues to come back and talk about herself, just like the character of Miss Piggy would all the time. She's actually promoting a late-night show where you can go in and talk to her, and she will continue to respond about why she isn't like the best person in the world and be all egotistical and narcissistic. But That's the entertainment. That's what keeps me coming back and being interested. She's delivering on that entertainment value of the character. I love Pancho. Have you guys seen Pancho? Pancho's the cat who gives you the weather. He has some uncanny valley. He gets frustrated sometimes if you speak to him funny, and then he tells you to speak in cat. So he's got a little snark. He'll respond to you. You can see some of these things. Somebody here is like, meow, dumb face, and he's like, purr. You hear me? You're a dumb face. Rude, pick whichever you want. Sorry or whatever, right? Silly cat. And then he does a little thumbs up, right? There's personality there. There's something interesting going on there. I want my weather from Pancho. Penny. Penny is finances. This is really interesting. They're starting financial chatbots. There was a big announcement from Facebook a couple weeks ago. They are starting to get in and give you much more depth of your information about your account. What's scaring everybody about the financials is that that chatbot could theoretically give all my money away any second by accident, right? And so there's a lot of tension and trepidation about exploring this area. So right now we're just giving data that we know, and we're starting to give you a little bit more insight, and these are interesting ways that give you insight. There's the number of coffees I had this week, or times I shopped at Starbucks versus somewhere else. And Penny's kind of nice, she's cool, she gives me some stuff, but what about Dime? Dime is my passive-aggressive Jewish grandmother, who's 97, lives a building away from me, and says, why can't you be more like your sister? Type $10 and give me some savings. She has personality, right? I know that person. She's guilting me into saving money. Thank you, Grandma. Taco Bell. Love the Taco Bell. You guys saw that before, I think. Taco Bell, you can order your tacos in Slackbot. Great stuff, right? You go through, you tell it what you want, it orders it, puts it together, you go pick it up. It's also kind of snarky. You tell it, I'm drunk. It says, okay, I've added a cup of water to your order. Right? It knows what you want. It knows how to help you because that's what that audience is looking for. It also has a little bit more snark here on personality. What came first, the chicken or the egg? That's easy. Goes on this whole diatribe and ultimately pulls it back to making tacos and selling tacos. Really well-written personalities. Really rooted in the brand and really good at delivering on who that brand personality is and really hitting their audience well. Lark. Lark is similar to the other, the finance app. This is actually a health and fitness app that uses your Apple Health Kit data and tells you how you're doing. And it encourages you. Thank you. I need that help. I need to be reminded I need to get up and run around like my Fitbit does. But on the other side, I also need to be reminded to eat better. And sometimes it can be a little snarky and make me try and feel bad about not eating or eating too much or whatever. And like, oh, you've eaten a little bit more than you normally do. Well, yeah, but thanks for telling me. And it's like, it's okay, keep trying, you know. The invisible boyfriend and invisible girlfriend. Have you guys seen this one? This one's awesome. You can basically make your own fake boyfriend or girlfriend, give it a bunch of personality traits that you like, and it will text you randomly and try and have a lovely conversation with you and basically create a date. It'll set up a date. Boy, girl, whatever you guys want, make up a fake girlfriend, show all your friends that you're dating somebody. It's awesome. This one is not quite a chatbot, but it has an immense amount of personality. Authentic Weather. And I don't know if you guys have seen this. It is very intense about how it does the weather. It's very accurate. It's just very, emotional about it, right? So some of my favorites, it's like a oven. Just get naked and get some ice cream, right? It's too hot outside. So he's written some really nice things. It's amazeballs, get outside. And the last one, it's ducking, freezing, damn you autotype. Damn you autocorrect on Apple, right? So there's some personality. You can have some fun with this. But all it's doing is some great writing that says when it's in this parameter, present these options for the weather. So, in conclusion, bots are dumb and young, and no clippy bots. Thank you.
That was great stuff. Thank you. I need to bring the panel up because we're running, we have to end by 5. That was great stuff, Gabe. Thank you. We're going to go get some of those chatbots for sure, especially the weather. Last, welcoming Sarah.
Chuck. Hello, everyone, and thanks for hanging in there. And hello to all of our millions of viewers on Facebook and Periscope. So I'm excited about this panel where we're going to talk about the tools of the trade, and I'll hit on what the theme is. First, I'd like to introduce the experts that we have here, who I'm really excited about. To my immediate left, we have Benjamin, or Benji Borinat, who's the Global Director of Social Media at Kinetic Worldwide, which is a social service within WPP. We have Tammy Harrison, who is the VP of Product Marketing at Grubhub, which is the largest food ordering platform in the world. Did I get that right? And then we have Eitan Oren, who's CEO of Block Party, which is a company that for 2 years has specifically been involved in bots and chats and conversational marketing. So 3 people who really know what they're talking about in this space. And I think what we're meant to do here is to give a view of how brands are using and creating two-way conversations with their customers, and how they're using the specific platforms and marketing practices and tools that are available. And obviously, there's so many different executions of conversational marketing, and we're in very early days. I'm almost reminded of in the early days of online advertising, when there were something like 12,000 advertising units. Now you have to consider the platform and the execution and the creative and the personality all together. So platforms such as Facebook Messenger, Kik, Snapchat, and so forth are dominating time spent, especially with younger demographics. So we'll talk about the unique nature of these platforms and the skills needed to use them. So I'd like to start, and I think I'm going to start with Benji, but just to talk about, there's always, I think, in new forms of marketing and advertising, a divide between what consumers are doing and what marketers are doing. And so I'd like to talk about where are we with the level of interest with marketers, what part of the budget, what part of the marketing department is this coming from, and how does that compare to what's happening in the consumer marketplace? So just, for instance, take Facebook and Facebook Messenger and talk about what's happening there and where the growth is.
Thanks, Sarah. I think that in marketing, there is this never-ending quest for channel expansion. And this is like media fragmentation is a great thing because it's helping us move from one to many to one to few and one-to-one communication with audiences much more easily. And it's tapping into Facebook large audience as well. I think 2/3 of US Facebook users are actually active on Messenger on a daily basis. So it's a great platform for brands to experiment and also drive results. So you're right, there's this diversity of platforms. Each of these platforms deserves their own content strategy. We're talking about micro content strategies. You need to tailor each piece of content to the platform you are using. You're not gonna communicate the same thing via an Instagram story or a tweet, right? So I think the same applies to Facebook Messenger and chatbots. Like any social media strategy, you need to really look at the overall program, the KPIs. You may realize that a chatbot is not the best platform, for you or the audience. So, yeah.
Okay, and do the two of you have a feeling in terms of, like, Grubhub? I know is a business.
Social.
Let's say conversation, because we talked about chatbots obviously play a role, but in using data in real time to incorporate the voice of the customer or the consumer is a new skill set, right?
Yeah, for sure. We do that quite a bit. I mean, both Grubhub and Seamless are part of our company. So there's in New York. Seamless is probably part of your lives. And we have an incredible amount of data as well as a really engaged diner base. And so we spend a lot of time thinking about what do our diners need, communicating that through a lot of our marketing communication, and then using that feedback loop. So when someone gets an order, we actually ask for their feedback. We share that back to customers. We actually share that back to our restaurants. So we use that as part of our user experience. And then from the marketing side, we've actually been having a lot of fun with conversational commerce. We've been thinking a lot about what this will be in the future. It's obviously still the beginning, and so it's strategically important for us. We don't have any immediate plans, but it's certainly something that we're thinking about quite a bit.
Right, and I know, Aitan, you've been doing this for 2 years, and it's probably a big part of what you're offering to your clients, but how does it fit into the overall mix? Like, which part of the marketing structure are you working with? Is it creative? Is it...
I think it generally gets put into an experimental bucket.
Experimental, yeah.
You know, I think I'm constantly thinking about what will it take for the industry as a whole to go from being viewed as experimental to being seen as essential, because it's actually very interesting that there's more people on chat apps every month than on social networks, but it doesn't feel that way in marketing land and in terms of how the budgets are, and there's reasons for it too. It's not just everyone being overly cautious. I think there are great things about these apps. They grew very quickly, so people are kind of wrapping their heads around it. It's a trickier proposition, right, because all these social networks are built for broadcast messaging. All of a sudden, you're on these platforms where people are there to talk to their friends and family, and as a marketer, you got to kind of find your way and figure out how to get to be a part of that and not feel like you're the person that doesn't belong at the party. And analytics are behind where they're at on all these social networks. So there's a whole number of reasons that I think that it's, for the moment, still in sort of the experimental, sometimes the social bucket, sometimes the marketing bucket.
I think that's true. It's complex, right? I mean, a lot of this, real-time marketing really involves leveraging data and really jumping on and taking advantage of sometimes real-time events. Like I know a couple of you have an example, and Aitan, you do as well. Maybe you can talk about those programs, but with a specific focus kind of on the platforms you used and the tools you used to execute them.
Yeah, I can speak to that. So for anybody who was ordering food on Monday, we actually took over our product experience as well as all of our marketing to really understand from our diner base who they were actually voting for and who they felt was hungriest for the candidacy. So we had an I'm with her and I'm with him promo code that we used. So on our back end, we actually had the ability to read the data real time to be able to see how many of our diners were using those codes. We gave everyone 5% off for the day, and it allowed us to get a ton of data, which we shared out through Twitter throughout the debate evening. I can tell you the final vote was 82% of our diners voted with I'm with her. And so we used that. We then brought that back to our diners the next day to let them know. And we actually have some interesting food trends as well as like state by state. So it's really fun for us to be able to use engagement with our customers, data and analytics on the back end, as well as both our product experience as well as the social channels that we have to truly create that real-time conversation.
That's awesome.
And Aitan, I know you had the program called Hello Vote. How did that work?
Yeah, so we have one of our nonprofit clients built really the first chatbot-based voter registration systems. So you can register to vote on Facebook Messenger or via SMS. So if you go to m.me/hellovote, you can actually try out the experience on Messenger. Yeah, I think the magic for that project was really on the back end and jumping through all the legal hoops of allowing people to legally register through in every state through a chatbot and all that. So, yeah, we didn't build that ourselves, but it's a really exciting project that we're just excited to be a part of.
Yeah, that sounds exciting. I think that one of the advantages of this type of media is that it can be executed fairly quickly. and you can take advantage of that, sort of like a break this glass strategy, so in real time. And then sometimes these things are always on, but sometimes they're more campaign oriented. Can you talk about, you know, how you view conversational marketing in that regard? Like when would it be more of a, you know, a one-time or a campaign thing versus?
I know that during the last Fashion Week, for instance, Tommy Hilfiger launched the first, you know, like buy now, you know, collection sales through, you know, Facebook Messenger. They created a Gigi Hadid bot, which was pretty, you know, fun because it's also their model, and they used that to, you know, increase sales during Fashion Week. So short term, obviously, because I'm sure there are tons of inventory issues, you know, behind that, right? You can't really maintain that in retail. But yeah, to me, it's more, you know, like of a short-term, you know, kind of program right now. But how do you integrate that into the overall, you know, social media strategy at the same time?
Right.
For a brand.
I mean, I remember in the early days of mobile when people would create an app for a campaign and then abandon it. So, you know, it's not, I think that there are some things like bots where if you develop it, you need to chase it through, you need to stay with it.
Yeah. I really like what Sapient Nitro, you know, colleague, you know, mentioned earlier, you know, the different personality traits that a bot can have, and I think it's really about the context, right? So again, you know, what are the objectives? You know, is it, you know, visibility? Is it just, you know, like publicity, engagement? Doesn't matter. But I think based on that, you can also, you know, see how long you're going to use it, and you know, is it tied to an event? Is it tied to, you know, a larger, you know, campaign or elections? You know, it's really how do we leverage of these, you know, these different contextual patterns to make it more relevant. Right.
My experience has been that most bots in the market right now are intended to be evergreen. We built a bot for Katy Perry and her perfume company Coty that was intended to be disposable and to be a 6-month campaign, and we're very pleased with those results. I think the only drawback might be like, oh, we just amassed 150,000 subscribers. Like, seems silly to let this go to waste. Maybe we should do more with it, going forward. But I think there's no reason the bots can't have a purpose and then be out.
Right. So can we talk a little bit about the platforms themselves? There's Facebook Messenger, there's Kik, there's Instagram, Snapchat. Snapchat is kind of, I would say, the big and hot one that everyone's talking about. And actually, there was a panel today that spent, the entire panel talking about Snapchat, so we don't have to go deep on that. But I kind of am interested in how you view the different flavors of platforms and which you would use for what, or when you kind of choose one over another and why.
Yeah, I can speak to that. So we have presence on Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, Twitter, and we really do think, similar, Benji, to what you said around micro content, as well as the specific segments of users that are engaged with those platforms. So Snapchat, as an example, we've done some things on campus, so college and like the 18 to 24 population is quite relevant for that audience. So we did some interesting filters before events, which we could actually do geo-targeted, so it's not only to our own base, but also to anybody who's looking for the filters within that geo period. We've also used Facebook and some of their Canvas ads, which I think are now some best practices. So it's really about finding the right content within that channel. And the good news, at least for us, is food is one of the most, sort of social elements right now. So for us, it's a great place for us to take advantage of that content. Video and obviously food first makes a lot of sense.
You guys did an early iMessage app too, right?
So iMessage we haven't launched. No, that was a competitor of ours.
I'm a terrible person.
That's okay.
So, talking past that, sorry. I think that regional popularities is a big factor for all of these chat apps. So, we basically, find that certain companies are really focused on the U.S. market, and others are looking to hit other markets. And these popularity of the chat apps is really, pretty fragmented in terms of different countries. So that's, I think, probably where we often start in terms of which of these platforms should we focus on. And then, I think there's an increasing amount of similarity in the product offerings from one to the other, especially over the last 2 years. They've kind of, once one company comes up with something awesome, for the most part, the other ones decide, hey, that's cool, let's try that too, which is often very helpful from a marketing perspective, because now you can kind of create a core experience and syndicate it to various places, but figure out how to fine-tune it for each of those apps.
And do you find that the programs are complex enough that you're going with one platform or another? I mean, are you ever rolling out a program that's, multiple platforms and just kind of taking on, a different flavor in terms of the creative execution?
I haven't, personally, I haven't seen that with messaging app, because again, it's, you have to feel, it has to feel, the content needs to feel native to the actual platform. But I have a funny story. For instance, we had MTV the other day coming to us, and they're very keen on, growing their presence, on Facebook Messenger and all of that. But they're targeting teens, right? And so we looked at, where are teens today, and they're not, obviously they're being on Snapchat. MTV doesn't need us for Snapchat, but we realized that actually, teens spend a lot of time on Gmail. So we, and so this is, really, where, we look at the audience, their, media behaviors, and again, thanks to the diversity of platforms that are emerging, we're really able to, create and tailor, laser targeting, programs across the right platforms. So I would say again, yes, we want to maintain the overall, brand message, the social message, but then we're going to, create programs that are, that are dedicated to the actual platform versus, rolling out a bot. If I would say the same thing across the board.
Right, and I think people are still getting their feet wet. Although, Eitan, I know that you talked to me about third-party companies that are starting to make it easy to run bots and chat across multiple properties. Is that something that you've looked at or employed or?
Yeah, I feel like every week there's another sort of chatbot tech company cropping up. So yeah, some of them really just focus on Facebook Messenger, but there are companies out there that they can help you build one bot and then shoot it out to Messenger, Telegram, Slack, Line, a couple of the others, Kik as well. So I think that there's going to be a growing role for those third-party companies in the space, for sure.
Yep. I'd like to talk a little bit about the skills needed to execute these types of programs. I know, even just in content marketing and native marketing, you're talking about different skill sets. But I know, obviously, data and creativity and, being able to make the strategic platform choices. Like, what does your team look like? Who are the great people who know all these things, or how do they work together to execute these types of programs?
Yeah, I can jump in. So actually, a function like mine is a good example. So product marketing exists in some companies, and it's meant to be a bridge between our product and technology development as well as within marketing. I roll up into the marketing organization, and we've taken a lot of the flavor of how product organizations are very agile and brought that to the marketing team. So we spend a lot of time making sure as a team that we are thinking about, is it 80-20 rule of like 80% will hit our bottom line and meet all of our goals, and the 20% we're continually doing a ton of A/B testing on pretty much everything we do. And so data plays a massive role in making decisions and really empowering everybody to make those decisions. So we spend a lot of time empowering people using the data as well as being as agile and really thinking about the sort of, it doesn't have to be perfect in order to get some learnings.
I agree with that. So same, we're not technologists. That's actually more, something, A10 does. But we look at anybody that can design, personalize, and measure the interaction from, obviously, social media, community managers, content creatives, but also, PR professionals. People who know how to drive, storytelling and one-to-one conversation.
I'm curious to know it sounds like, Tammy, there's the risk profile at Grubhub is pretty high. Like you're willing to take some risks. Is that the case with the clients you guys are working with? Like, I think about the cautionary tale of Tay, Microsoft's bot that, somehow fell in with the wrong crowd and became a neo-Nazi. Can something like that happen? I mean, there's going to be some kind of, brand steps in it somewhere with a bot. Are you guys worried about that? Or, is it the kind of thing, well, if it does happen, we'll learn from it and move on?
Well, that's not very likely to happen for a brand. I know a few people had talked earlier today about the real disparity from a high level of artificial intelligence to very basic bots. And, by and large, brands are really sticking to the fairly simple rule-based decision tree bots, and there's no danger of any of them becoming neo-Nazis. They absolutely will stay on script without a doubt. The interesting thing about Microsoft is that they're actually responsible for the biggest success and biggest failure. So there's
Everyone talks about
before Tay in the U.S. they had what's called Xiaohoi's in China, which has 40 million people that have interacted with it on average of 60 times a month, and that's really like maybe the only real pop culture chatbot phenomenon. So what I imagine will happen over time is that we will increasingly just nudge a little bit over towards artificial intelligence from the super simple stuff, but always making sure that there's no chance that thing can go off the rails for a brand.
Right. So I would like to know if you have any lessons, because A10, I think you've been doing bots and chats probably the deepest or the longest. If there have been any lessons learned, if you can talk about that. And then I did want to talk, I wanted you to tell the story of the Katy Perry program with the cat bot on Kick, but specifically what drove you to choose Kick and how that all works and fits in with her brand, because it made me kind of realize how much creative and the platform choice are tied together.
Sure. So I've been working with Kick for over 3 years. So I launched, while I was at IPG, where I worked with Benji, launched my first campaign in the space for One Direction on Kick. And Kick is a very teen-centric app. They claim that 40% of US teens have the app. The interesting challenge with Katy Perry, which was actually a very e-commerce driven campaign, is that because they have all these teenagers, they don't have credit cards. And they're trying to figure out, well, how can we give these kids some sort of buying power? And so they came up with this sort of virtual currency system where kids can watch ads and earn what are called Kick points, and then they can redeem them. Until the Katy Perry campaign, they had redeemed them primarily for emojis. But this was the first time where you could actually earn a physical product. So you would save up all your Kick points, buy the Katy Perry perfume, and we actually had it shipped to people's houses. Her perfume company, Coty, was really excited about trying to reach an audience in that way. We kind of positioned it as a no-brainer because they were getting paid out for the product. And and in terms of some of the interesting things that came up, and I think the Sapien Nitro really spoke to me, your presentation, because I really do think creativity kind of makes or breaks whether these things feel cool. With Katy Perry's team, they didn't want people to think they were talking to Katy Perry, that they couldn't run that risk. So Katy Perry's very into cats, and there's a cat that is the star of her perfume campaign. So we actually had the whole campaign built around being able to chat with her cat, who's Katie's, best bud, and you can take a quiz to learn what Katy Perry song are you, and then buy the perfume. So I think giving it some personality and a sort of mascot in one way or another can go a long way with the bots.
I really like that. I think that for a very long time, social was only, like an extension of the overall creative campaign, whatever it was, boosted with some, paid media here and there, whatever. And bots are really, pushing the creative envelope and, pushing marketers to create dedicated social media strategies, for bot messaging. But I think you're right. It's really, driving creativity in that space, which is super important.
I would also just add, as you think about your own experience, so when someone comes to our site or our app, obviously we can control the story and our voice and brand can come to life. So as we think about building these experiences, you can imagine in the food space, reordering or group ordering together, those all make a lot of sense in some of those environments. And so for us, it'll be about how do we make sure that we are where people are, but also have the personality of our brand so that we, make sense in those experiences.
There was a little bit of talk earlier too about the use of actual voice. Are any of you have you dabbled in the use of voice with bots, or is this something you're thinking about? Is it do you think that it's headed in that direction?
Yeah. I mean, we're looking into it, especially for search. We see like Siri, these bots. I think it's going to have a lot of potential in the travel industry. When it comes to planning your trip and once you again in the context of the local culture, being able to to find what you want and with today's technology you can. For instance, we, my partner and I watch, Apple TV all the time, and when he's not around, I like to watch French movies, and I can just, speak in French to Siri, to the Apple TV, and they're gonna find the movies in French that I want. So that's how smart, technology is today. So there's a lot of potential for sure.
Okay, I guess I just have one more question. Temperature check on the future. So if I look back, say 2007, 2008, when people talked about social media or Facebook or something like that, it was kind of like, do you want fries with that? We could sprinkle a little social media. That's, I think, conversational marketing is today. Do you want to do a little bit of that? And we can put some of that in. Maybe it's a little bit more for Grubhub, maybe for your clients a little bit more, and then now, of course, Facebook and these social platforms are mainstream, and they're a very big consideration for a lot of budgets. When do we get to that place? Like, how many years out are we looking where conversational marketing is more mainstream, or do we get there? What do you think? How important is it going to get?
Very important, and probably very quickly too, because there's so many platforms today. Look at, we're talking about, the US market, but you have so many other platforms globally that you can use, for development. I don't know if Grubhub has, plans to develop internationally, but, if you're looking at Latin America, for instance, it's going to be Skype, WhatsApp, right? Versus a messenger. If you're looking at China, it's going to be Weibo versus, a Snapchat. There's a lot of opportunities, and actually I think you have some data around, like how much people are going to use messaging app versus traditional social media, I believe.
Sure. Yeah, I'm a person who quit their large agency job 2 years ago because I believed enough in this space. So obviously I'm very biased, but.
So I'm going to ask how many years? How many years?
Well, like I said, I think we're already at the point where I think marketers follow audiences, and the audiences are bigger here than social networks. So as long as the audience stay there, I think the marketers are going to feel more and more pressure to figure this out and to emphasize it. And the more that the chat apps are going to have to figure out how to make the marketers happy so that they can stay afloat. And, I think that's what's happening now. The bots thing is actually a little bit scary to me because like a lot of it hasn't gone that well. Not all bots are great. A lot of them aren't. And so, you know, I think it's an interesting moment in which the industry is like, all these companies are committing to it, and we'll see if it becomes something great. And I think it will over time. I think it's just, it can be tricky.
Mobile advertising didn't go well for quite
There you
a while,
go.
too. Do you have any predictions, Tammy, on that?
I don't have a prediction on a year, but I would say the amount of time these platforms take to ramp up are just so much faster than they used to be. So things are changing at a rapid pace, and as brands, we need to be thinking about them and ready for them. So I think now is the time for all of us to start dabbling and then figure out when we start to see that the behavior, as you said, the audience is there, that the data is there, that we can actually learn from it, because that's incredibly important. As I said, like A/B testing, we need to know what's going on in order to invest in it.
Great. Do we have time for questions? Or okay. All right. Well, please help me in thanking our great panelists.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good job. Great ending. Good stuff. Thank you. Well done, everybody. Well done, Sarah. Thank you. That concludes our program of Boss today. All of